Today's video, I wanted to try a different area of the room, and today I found this account on Reddit, and some of their stories I really like, so I wanted to go on here and read some of them for you. So let's get started. My name is Daniel Carter, and this happened to me back in October of 2019 in a small town outside Asheville, North Carolina. I had always been into exploring abandoned places with a couple of my friends, but that night I decided to check out a place that locals have been talking about for years. There was an old two-story house sitting at the end of a dirt road surrounded by tall trees. People in the town always said strange things happened there, but never believed in any of that stuff. To me, it was just another abandoned building to explore. I went there around 9 at night. My friend Mark was supposed to come with me, but he canceled last minute, so I decided to go alone. The house looked worse up close than it did in the pictures I had seen online. Most of the windows were broken, and the front porch was slightly collapsed on one side. The air around the place felt quiet in a strange way, like the woods themselves were holding their breath. The front door was already slightly opened, so I pushed the rest of the way and stepped inside. The smell of dust and old wood hit me immediately. My flashlight moved across the walls, which were covered in peeling paint and old stains. The floor creaked with every step I took. I remember thinking that the house looked like it had been empty for decades, but something about it still felt off. The front door was already slightly opened, so I pushed the rest of the way and stepped inside. The smell of dust and old wood hit me immediately. My flashlight moved across the walls, which were covered in peeling paint and old stains. The floor creaked with every step I took. I remember thinking that the house looked like it had been empty for decades, but something about it still felt off. As I walked into what looked like an old living room, I noticed something strange. In the middle of the floor, there was a wooden chair, placed perfectly upright facing the wall. Everything else in the house was broken or covered in dust, but that chair almost looked untouched. I remember laughing to myself, thinking maybe some other explorer had just left it there as a joke. I continued walking through the house, checking each room. Most of them were empty except an old furniture and scattered trash. After a few minutes, I had found the staircase that led up to the second floor. As I stepped onto the first stair, I heard a faint sound above me. It sounded like something lightly dragging across the floor. I stopped and listened, but the sound disappeared. I told myself it was probably an animal, so I slowly went upstairs. The hallway at the top was narrow and darker than the rest of the house. There were 3 rooms up there. The first 2 were completely empty, except for dust and broken boards. When I reached the last room at the end of the hall, I noticed the door was closed. What caught my attention was the handle. It was slowly moving like someone on the other side had just let go of it. I stood there for a few seconds staring at it. My first thought was that someone else might be in the house, and honestly that scared me more than any ghost story. I pushed the door open and quickly shined my flashlight around the room. There was no one there. The room was completely empty, except for a small wooden table near the corner. On top of it was something that looked out of place. It was a notebook. The cover looked old and worn, but it didn't have any dust on it like the rest of the room. I walked over and opened it. Inside were handwritten notes covered almost every page. At first, it looked like random writing, but as I kept reading, I started to feel uncomfortable. The pages were filled with short entries like a diary, but they didn't look normal. Some of them were written over and over again. One line kept appearing again and again. Someone is always in the house with me. Another line said, "It watches from the hallway at night." The handwriting became more messy as the pages went on, like whoever wrote it was getting more paranoid. The last page had only one sentence written across it. "It followed me upstairs." Right as I read that sentence, I heard a loud creak behind me in the hallway. It sounded exactly like someone stepping on an old wooden floor outside the room. I froze for a few seconds and slowly turned my flashlight towards the doorway. The hallway was empty, but I could still hear the faint sound of something moving out there, like a slow, shifting step. At that point, I didn't care what it was. I grabbed the notebook and walked quickly down the stairs, trying not to run. The moment I stepped outside the house, the air felt different, like pressure had lifted off my chest. I got into my car and drove back into town. The next day, I asked an older guy who worked at a small gas station near the road about the house. When I mentioned the location, he looked at me strangely and asked if I actually went inside. I told him I did. He then told me something that made my stomach drop. Years ago, a man lived in that house alone, and neighbors said he slowly became paranoid, claiming someone was living in the house with him. Eventually, the police were called after people reported hearing him shouting inside the house later that night. When officers arrived, they found the house empty. The man was never found, and the house has been abandoned ever since. I still have that notebook locked in my drawer in my apartment. I don't know why I kept it, but sometimes I think about the last line written on the final page. It followed me upstairs. The strange part is that when I checked the notebook again a few weeks later, I noticed something. I swear it wasn't there before. There was one more sentence written underneath it. You shouldn't have taken this. I have been working the overnight shift at a small gas station just off the highway for about 8 months. It's not a busy place after midnight. Most of the customers are truck drivers, the occasional rideshare drivers, or someone grabbing cigarettes before heading home. After 2 a.m., it usually goes dead quiet. The hum of the refrigerator gets louder, the fluorescent lights feel harsher, and every sound seems bigger than it should be. I got used to that silence. What I didn't get used to was the night he showed up. It was a Wednesday around 2:10 a.m. when a dark sedan pulled into pump 3. I noticed it immediately because I hadn't seen a car in nearly 40 minutes. The vehicle stopped, but no one got out. The engine stayed running. I waited for the driver to step out and started pumping gas, but nothing happened. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The car just sat there with its headlights on, aimed directly at the store windows. Eventually, the lights switched off, but the engine was still running. That's when I started feeling uneasy. After almost 20 minutes, the driver finally stepped out. He was an average-looking guy, maybe mid-30s, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. Nothing obviously strange about him, except he didn't reach for the pump. He didn't even look at it. He just stood beside his car, staring straight at the store, at me. I tried to act normal, pretending to organize the counter, but I could feel his eyes locked on the building. About a minute, he walked inside. He didn't browse, didn't grab a drink, didn't check out his phone. He walked straight up to the counter and stood there silently. I gave him a casual, "Hey, how's it going?" He didn't answer. He just looked at me, expressions completely blank. After a few seconds, he asked, "What time do you get off?" The question hit me wrong. Customers sometimes make small talk, but this didn't feel like that. I told him 6 a.m., even though my shift ends at 5. He nodded slowly, like he was storing that information. Then he glanced around and asked, "You here by yourself?" I lied and said my coworker was in the back doing inventory. He didn't buy anything. He didn't say goodbye. He just turned around and walked out. But he didn't leave. He got back into his car and stayed parked at the pump, the engine still running. 15 minutes passed, then 30. I kept checking the security monitor, hoping to see brake lights and then watch him drive off. Instead, at around 3 a.m., he moved the car not towards the exit, but into a parking spot directly in front of the store entrance. Then he turned the engine off. That's when I locked the door. We're not really supposed to lock it during overnight hours unless there's a serious reason, but something in my gut told me this was one. A few minutes later, he stepped out again and walked to the entrance. He pulled on the handle. It didn't open. He looked up through the glass and smiled. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't friendly. It was calm, like he expected the door to be locked. He tried the handle again, slower this time, then leaned slightly to the side, trying to see further inside the store. I picked up the phone and pretended to be in the middle of a call. He watched me for a few seconds, then walked back to his car. I thought that would be the end of it, but he didn't drive away. He sat there, completely still. The parking lot was empty except for his car. The highway in the distance was quiet. It felt like the entire world had shrunk down to just me and him. I finally called the non-emergency police line and explained to the man that had been lingering outside for nearly an hour and had asked what time I got off of work. While I was on the phone, I saw his brake lights flick on. My heart jumped, thinking he was finally leaving. Instead, he pulled forward and parked along the side of the building out of view of the main windows. That's when I really panicked. There's a blind spot along the side of the wall where the dumpsters are. The security cameras cover most of it, but not the very edge, near the back door. I kept staring at the monitor, terrified. I'd see him walk past the camera towards the employee entrance. Minutes felt like hours. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way. Then I saw movement on the screen. He stepped into frame from the side of the building, walking slowly towards the front again. He didn't try the door this time. He just stood there, looking in, waiting. After what felt like forever, police lights flashed across the parking lot. The moment he saw them, he got back in his car and drove off before the officers even pulled in. They took my statement, checked the area, and reviewed the footage. There wasn't much they could do since he hadn't technically broken in or threatened me. They advised me to call immediately if he came back. He didn't return the next night, or the one after that. But about 2 weeks later, I was checking the cameras during another quiet shift when I felt my stomach drop. A dark sedan slowly drove past the station without turning in. It didn't stop. It didn't slow down much, but as it passed under the street light, I saw the driver's face clearly for just a second. It was him. He didn't look at the pumps. He didn't look at the road. He was looking directly at the store windows. And even though he kept driving that time, I haven't worked a single shift since without wondering if one night he's going to come back, and this time, not leave at all. Last Halloween, something happened to me that I still can't properly explain. And I swear I'm not the type of person who imagines things or scares easily. It was around 11:30 at night when I got home from work, and the neighborhood was already quiet because most of the trick-or-treaters had gone home. I wasn't sleepy yet, so I decided to take a short walk down my street just to relax a bit. About halfway down the block, I noticed what I thought was a Halloween decoration standing near a driveway. It looked like a person wearing a black robe with a plain white mask, the kind people use for creepy costumes, and it was standing right near the sidewalk like it was meant to scare someone walking past it. I didn't think much of it at first because people in my area go all out with decorations, but the closer I got, the more I started to feel like something wasn't right. I couldn't really explain that feeling except that my instincts were telling me to pay attention. The mask didn't look shiny like plastic decorations usually do. It looked dull and almost realistic under the street light, and the robe moved slightly in the wind like real fabric. When I was maybe 10 feet away, I heard a faint sound, and at first I thought it was just leaves moving, but then I realized it sounded like breathing, slow and steady, like someone standing still. I stopped walking and stared at it, trying to convince myself it had been some kind of prop making noise, because that made more sense than anything else. Then its head slowly tilted to the side, not fast or jerky like a machine, but slow and controlled like a real person reacting to me. My stomach dropped instantly, and I just stood there frozen, staring at it while it stared back at me through the mask. Before I could even react, it shifted its weight and took one quiet step towards me, and I clearly heard its shoe scrape the concrete. That was the moment I knew it wasn't a decoration. I backed up without thinking, and the second I moved, it stopped and went completely still again, like it hadn't done anything at all. but I turned and walked away fast, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. After a few seconds, I looked back over my shoulder, and the spot where I had been standing was empty. There was nothing there, no person, no costume, nothing. And there wasn't anywhere nearby it could have hidden that quickly. The next morning, I walked past the same driveway in daylight just to see if there was decorations there that could explain what I saw, but there was nothing at all. Not even leftover props or footprints or anything that suggested someone had been standing there the night before. I still go out on walks sometimes, but I never go down that side of the street anymore because I can't shake the feeling that one night if I do, I'll see it standing there again, perfectly still, like it's waiting for me to come close enough to notice its breathing. Alright, well, that was today's video. I just found a couple of these stories very interesting. I was looking on Reddit and found that account. So if you want to go check their stories out, I'll leave a link in the description and right here in the video. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Just something short and sweet I wanted to do. But I hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you in the next one.